Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, I had a voice radio. So today, I'm listening to you lovely people. For a while now, I've been getting a lot of comments in my YouTube videos saying, Ross, we need another PTCGRadio history lesson. Well, today you get your wish. So I do hope this video is watched by a lot of people and liked by a lot of people. I love doing these history videos. They were just never all that popular. I really hope this bucks a trend because they're a lot of fun to do. We are looking at Rising Rivals. It was released on the 20th of May 2009 and it was the second platinum set based on the game. Wait for it. Pokémon Platinum. Now, this did have a Mamoswine in, which makes me delighted. Had a Golem as well, and in my recent top 20 Pokemon ever video, I told you how much I love me some Golem. And although we got Snorlax Lv.X in Rising Rivals, one of my favourite Pokemon facts is that this was actually a Domino's Pizza promotional card in Japan. You bought pizza and got a free Snorlax Lv.X. which is awesome. Little bit of context for this set. SP was a thing, but Garchomp C Lv.X was not good yet. Garchomp C Lv.X only got good when Double Colorless Energy was reprinted for the first time in years in Heart Gold Soul Silver. But like I say, we still had these SP cards. So, in at number 10, we have Nidoqueen. Nidoqueen here was primarily the ability Maternal Comfort. You get to remove one damage counter from each of your Pokemon between turns, which means after your turn, after your opponent's, etc. Although the attack Ruthless Tail, 50 damage plus 10 more for each of your opponent's bench Pokemon, at the time was actually pretty good. Back then we had cards like Uxie and Claydol, which made it much easier to tech in random stage 2s, and people back then really did tech in even a 101 line if they were playing Rare Candy. Anyway, Nidoqueen saw quite a lot of play as a tech and gets in at number 10. In at number 9, another tech. It's JIRACHI. Now, JIRACHI had a couple of things going for it. Firstly, the attack Detour for 0 energy. If you have a supporter card in play, do that again. Now, this was back in the day. Nowadays, you use a supporter card, you discard it. It used to be that when you used a supporter, you put it next to your active Pokemon and it stayed there for the rest of your turn. Hence the phrase, if you have a supporter card in play. So you would use a supporter card and then JIRACHI would allow you to reuse it. What was even better was the Pokepower Final Wish. Once during your opponent's turn, if JIRACHI would be knocked out by damage, i.e. not something like poison, you may search your deck for any card and put it into your hand. This was a huge consistency boost. You gave up a prize, but you sat there reusing all your supporters, and then when he got knocked out, you searched for any card. Not to mention the fact that he had free retreat as well. JIRACHI got teched into a bunch of decks, and that's why he comes in at number 9. Now, after this, it all gets a little bit jumbled. Numbers 1 and 2 I'm very good with, but it's a little bit jumbled here. I'm doing my best. This is, I think, the best order, but from here on in, I wouldn't be too upset if you argued a bit. In at number 8, Lucario GL. GL stood for Gym Leader. These were owner's Pokemon, so you can see here that it belongs to a person. Lucario made all weakness ×2. Now, for newer players, this won't make much sense. All weakness is ×2. No, it's not. It used to be like +20, +30. So, ×2 made a huge difference to a lot of things. If you look at something like, well, let's look back at Nidoqueen. If your opponent's got one bench Pokemon, you're doing 60 damage. With Lucario out, it goes up to 120, which at the time would basically KO anything. Not to mention, of course, that it was an SP Pokemon, so it got all the tricks of SP. And one of the main ones, which is not in Rising Rivals, so we weren't going to talk about it here, is Poketurn. It's like Super Scoop Up, but only for SP Pokemon, and you don't need to flip a heads. Little bit silly. In at number 7, AMBIPOM. Now, AMBIPOM takes a little bit of explanation, because at first glance, AMBIPOM doesn't look particularly good. Double Colorless Energy for 60 damage if your opponent has no energy attached to it, otherwise you only do 20. How was this possibly a good thing? And the reason was Garchomp C Lv.X. Now, again, we're waiting until Heart Gold Soul Silver when Double Colourless is reprinted. Garchomp C Lv.X would use Energy Gain, another one of these SP-only tools, and it would use Double Colourless Energy. And the theory was very simple. I don't need any turns to build up Garchomp, because with an Energy Gain and a Double Colourless, I can use Dragon Rush in a single turn. But Dragon Rush means you need to discard 2 energy. So, you attach Energy Gain, Double Colourless, discard the Double Colourless, you then have 0 energy left on Garchomp, and would you believe it? Garchomp is weak to Colourless. Back in the day, all the Dragon types were Colourless, and they were weak to Colourless. Now AMBIPOM comes along, and AMBIPOM's doing 120 for just a Double Colourless, and it's not a Lv.X like Garchomp. It was, quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen, a Garchomp counter. Although a lot of people would argue that Dragonite FB was a better colourless attacker to use against SP decks. It took 3 energy rather than 2 to use the best attack, but it did 80 against all SP. So although AMBIPOM was strictly better against Garchomp, Dragonite would do 80 damage, which could KO an awful lot of SP Pokemon, and again, you could just use Energy Gain and Double Colourless Energy on him. AMBIPOM takes a bit of explanation. In at number 6, Flygon, and Flygon Lv.X. Now, David Cohen, who did actually win Masters in Worlds, in 2009 got to the finals of Worlds as a senior with his Flygon-centered deck, and there's a lot to like about both the Flygon here. The ability Rainbow Float says that any Pokemon whose typing is the same as any basic energy attached to Flygon now have free retreat. Lots of people tried to use Rainbow Energy to give everything free retreat. It says basic energy. So if you've got Psychic Energy attached to Flygon, all your Psychic have free retreat. Not to mention Sandwall allows you to discard a stadium your opponent has in play, and then you do 40 damage and you're invincible the following turn. That, ladies and gentlemen, bit silly. Now, it was only your opponent's stadium, but you get rid of their stadium and get invulnerability. Then, of course, we've got Power Swing, 60 damage plus 10 more for each evolved Pokemon on your bench. You could be doing 110. And as I'm hoping you're starting to see from the cards we've already looked at, 110 was actually very good back in the day. Now, these next 3 you could chop and change as you like. In at number 5, SP Energy. Very simply, it's Rainbow Energy. Except you don't take a damage counter when you attach it, and you can only attach it to SP Pokemon. Now, this is crucial, ladies and gentlemen, because SP decks would play a mixture of different types, so this would be fantastic. Let's look at Lucario that I mentioned earlier. You would very, very rarely attack with Combo Throw. But if your opponent happens to have a whole bunch of energy attached to the defending Pokemon, you could put an SP Energy on Lucario and attack whether you were playing Metal Energy or not. In at number 4, SP Radar. SP Radar allows you to put any card from your hand into your deck and search for a Pokemon SP. Now again, the SP decks generally played just SP Pokemon. Imagine if instead of having to discard 2 cards from your hand to play Ultra Ball, you just had to put one back in your deck. That would save so many painful discards. It was amazing Pokemon search. And the thing I should mention here, another one of the SP tools, now it wasn't in Rising Rivals, but we need to mention it, Cyrus's Conspiracy. It allowed you to search for a basic energy, an SP tool card like SP Radar, Energy Gain, etc., and another supporter, so you would just Cyrus chain. You'd search for another Cyrus, and every turn you'd have a tool, and you'd have a basic energy, because we had cards like Uxie that drew us cards we didn't need to use our supporters. These SP tools, ladies and gentlemen, were rude, and that's why SP Radar came in at number 4. In at number 3, a very similar card, BEBE'S Search. It is SP Radar. Difference is you can grab any Pokemon, and it's your only supporter for the turn, rather than an item. So why does it come a space higher than SP Radar? Because it could be used in any deck whatsoever. so it deserves in at number 3. This really was a staple in almost every deck for years. And it's only in at number 3. In at number 2, Beedrill. Beedrill won the World Championships, ladies and gentlemen. Steven Silvestro literally won worlds with Beedrill. Once during your turn, you may search your deck for a grass Pokemon, show it to your opponent, and put it into your hand. Lots and lots of consistency here. Now, bearing in mind, at the time, we also had Broken Time Space that was just like Forest of Giant Plants, except it worked for any type of Pokemon, not just grass. Now, the attack here was fine, but it wasn't particularly amazing, but we didn't need it to be, ladies and gentlemen, because we had a better Beedrill. You use the Rising Rivals Beedrill just to kind of get going, get yourself all set up, and then we had this Beedrill from Great Encounters to use Band Attack. 30 damage for every Beedrill you have in play, for a single grass energy. So you had Broken Time Space to get all your Beedrill out, the Rising Rivals Beedrill helped you to search out more Beedrill, and then you did 120 for 1 energy. And I assure you, ladies and gentlemen, back then 120 for 1 energy was great. But the best card that came out of Rising Rivals, the one that everyone wanted to draw in their pack, was Luxray GL Lv.X. Nowadays, when you open a pack of Guardians Rising, you're crossing your fingers for a Tapu Lele. Well, back in the day, ladies and gentlemen, we were crossing our fingers for Luxray GL Lv.X. And, of course, Luxray. Luxray himself was okay. Trash Bolt was a decent attack. But really here it was all about the Lv.X. Free Retreat. 60 damage plus 30 to one of your own for just 2 energy, but don't forget you could play a Cyrus, search for an energy gain and a basic lightning, and there we go, ladies and gentlemen, you're going already. And of course, at the time, Gyarados was a huge deck, and you're hitting that for weakness. And then of course, Gyarados doesn't have a ×2 weakness, so you play Lucario. If you're thinking, hang on a second, that only does 120, all the SP decks also played Crobat G, that's where the extra 10 damage would come from. And if you're worried about the self-damage that Luxray does to your bench, do remember, ladies and gentlemen, that Garchomp C Lv.X had the ability Healing Breath, which completely healed all of your Pokemon SP. So it was fine. And of course, that's before we even mention the ability. Bright Look. It's a Lysander, but it's a Lysander in a format where there was no Lysander, and there was no Pokemon Catcher, and gusting effects weren't particularly prevalent. And to be perfectly honest, that Beedrill deck I told you about that won the World Championships, yeah, it actually played Luxray GL Lv.X just for the Bright Look ability. This card was immense, ladies and gentlemen. Rising Rivals was an exceptional set, ladies and gentlemen, and although you can mess around the orders a little bit, I do believe Luxray and Beedrill are stood at the top of the hill. But if you disagree, that's what the comment section is there for. Go nuts, be nice. Let me know if you think I should do a video explaining SP in more detail, because although we've talked about it a bit today, I feel like there's so much more SP that we can talk about. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on twitch.tv/PTCGRadio to get some live PTCG radio action, and if you want to support the channel, you can do so at patreon.com/PTCGRadio. The most important thing, as always, look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.